Again, this is Dr. Christopher Slaton. I'm glad that you could join me again today. Before I go into our main discussion from the Brains Body podcast, I want to let you know why it's important that you understand the structure of our discussions about the brain's body. And it's because you want to know that anything that I'm talking to you about is part of a practice. Because what I've done is I've spent more than 30 years just working with children and parents in crises or studying human to human contact and taking copious notes with the research team that has been documenting and recording the action as it unfolds. And we've been then developing the process cycles that I've been talking to you about to help a person move through feelings of hurt. I want to make that clear because what you're doing is you're practicing with Dr. Slaton live. And that's more important because when you need help as a parent, teacher, health and human service professional, or family member or child, you want to tune in and see if this works for you based upon the dialogue. Things that I've talked to you about is the same things we would talk about if I was assessing you for a individualized or a learning plan, right? That's customized. I would ask you some very specific questions, but at the end of the day, whatever I ask you, you should already be doing. And if you're not doing, that's why you're talking to me, because there's something going on. I want to make that clear. So now, welcome to the Brains Body podcast. I'm Dr. Christopher Slaton, human learning consultant with the Progressive Vested Institute of Focused Learning. Much of this work that we talk about has been done through the Progressive Vested Institute of Focused Learning, where I work with other human learning consultants on the front lines in homes, schools, neighborhoods, interacting with law enforcement, social service agencies, and the whole lot. I also interacted with senators, assembly people, and so forth and so on. So when I talk to you about the brain's body, I'm not just looking at the child's body, I'm looking at how I interact and how others interact with me as I'm going through the research process. So if I go talk to a legislator, for example, he or she knows that I'm an investigator and that I'm studying the brain. So their responses and my responses are open to documentation because that's what I'm looking at. How choice decisions are being made, utilizing the brain, studying the flow of emotion, thought, reflection. That's feedback, right? So as the author of Education of Science, let's be clear. What I'm saying there is that I've used education and I've used science to develop the brain's body, right? And so that's very important because when you look at what we're talking about as human system science, you need to know what you're practicing, right? And it's very simple. Three things that you'll always be able to revert back to or refer to when you think about what we're talking about or doing here at the Brains Body podcast. Number one, education, informing the brain. Look at it, think about it, talk through it, and understand that that's the purpose of education. But when you put science to it, it becomes literal. Why? Because the purpose of science, right, is to prepare your labor, right? And what I'm doing when I talk about program and process, I'm trying to get you to transition so that you begin to understand that that was what was left out of the equation. When I look at my own education, the reason why I probably didn't understand it was because it was based upon producing my labor, not my brain. What I'm trying to get you to connect is your brain to your labor. And then you begin to understand that when we talk about the brain, we're talking about informing the brain. So that we talk about the science, discipline is your body. And that's the labor part. Because when you went to school, you went to church, that's what everybody focused on was your body and display of discipline. So there was no thought about your brain in the equation. So in order for you to understand the brain's body or the brain's body learning system or the brain from the way that I'm talking about the brain using human system science, you need to understand that these are literal words. and that if you just go to a dictionary on root words, you'll understand that I am talking science. Things are designated through the use of terms. So when I use the word education, that means I researched it. And as you research it, and then you look at the details, you come to the conclusion, I think, like I did. The purpose of education is to inform the brain. The purpose of science is to prepare your labor. That means tools, computers, all those types of things are designed for you to apply your labor, right? Has nothing to do with your thinking because that increases cost. Your labor is what the educational system is set up to produce. Okay, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that you have to put the brain in it now. If you want to advance from where you are in leadership, management, or wherever you're trying to go, understand what I'm saying to you. The brain's body is the way you learn how to incorporate process into your way of developing and earning a living. That's why I talk a lot about homeschool, neighbor and workplace networks and fund development and all those types of things, because I'm just trying to lead you to make sense of the fact that we're talking about business. We're talking about things that I had to learn, and I'm going to talk about that pretty much today because that's very important. Because it wasn't until the epidemic or the pandemic, rather, we just now, or we're still moving through, where I had to leave my practice because of the infection of COVID. And so then I had to leave my practice. And so I called a sabbatical where I went into deep, deep reflection on my practice, all the children, all the tapes, all this footage that I'm talking about that I had compiled over the years. I finally had an opportunity to just go inside my lab and just study and just reflect on all those experiences. And in doing so, I realized how enmeshed I was inside that practice. So the reflections became self-reflections because I'm talking to you through the book and I'm saying to you, as I reflect upon the experiences of moving through these children and families and communities and crises, that this is what was going on inside of me. And so I say self-research, self-discovery, and self-help because that's how I got through it all. Because imagine yourself as an activist going into cities like Merced, Sacramento, Elk Grove, Rancho, San Francisco, Los Angeles. You go into these communities and you're talking about improving living learning support services. And every time you go in and you deal with a particular case, you're subject to meet 6, 7 other new professionals, right? And they're there because you're trying to present a new and innovative way to test, sense, and receive path functions to improve delivery learning support services to that particular parent or child that you're working for. So moving through all of that, that's the front lines. So on the front lines, I have been tested and proven, and I'm bringing that back to you only to say that when I reflected, I had to look at what was my education, what was it like, and how did I get here, you know? Because I'm reflecting on the reflections of my own inner sense of feel for where I am today. And it really, really uh, captured me, captivated me as I began to write this book. And I didn't want it to be on me, but I did want the reader to know that I'm in it. No, because I wasn't in my other books. Those were just plain research, and just plain reporting because we're talking about moving cases through the system. So on the one hand, I'm dealing with children and I'm saying the best interest of the child because I'm saying that the school systems that I'm interacting with don't have the child best interest in mind. Therefore, I have to move this case or that case or these cases to the higher levels outside the county into the state, and then interact with political people to try to get their support to get these services to the children and families that I'm working with. Okay. So I wanted to say all that because it may not be clear to you why I'm setting up the Brains Body podcast. And I'm setting up so that you begin to learn that the brain body learning system is a human learning process that any human being can relate to because it's based on real human to human contact interaction. I can move a little further. When you look at the existing systems of science and brain theology or whatever, is based on human science or computer science. It's not based upon actual hands-on study on the front lines with people who have sensory receive path damage that could be classified as mental health issues. Now, that's where my information comes from. That's what makes me different. That's why I've had to spend all this time in discovery, because I've had to go through a program offering ways for children to move through, or parents to move through, or teachers or other people who were bogged down by the program and couldn't do the work that we're talking about. So as you listen to the words and you apply the words, you should be asking yourself, what's taking it so long? This is exactly what was missing when I was there. Why didn't I get access to this? Because you were on a behavior modification system, which was all focused on your labor, on developing your labor as a product for society, which is nothing wrong with that. However, in the 21st century, it's beyond that. Now they want your information processing skills, because now you're talking about a wireless you who can work from remote locations where they need your brain to be involved. So now your brain has to be wired to your body, but it has to be in the lead of the body. That's the brain's body. That's why we're having this conversation. So I hope I've cleared that up. So again, I am the author of Education and Science, The Brain's Body, Help to Improve Brain, Body, and Sense Events, and it's a practice. So when you tune in, you're tuning in to your own practice. Catch up. That's what I'm saying to you. Why? Because this has been held back, as I pointed out in the opening dialogue, by all the people that I had to move through to get where I am today. And all of those books document and report how I got here, right? Evidence-based reporting, okay? So I want you to understand, education is to what? Inform the brain. That's why you want to talk to Dr. Slaton. Because if you have a problem and you don't understand because you're confused about it, then the key is, how can I help you move through the experience of self, where you can begin to understand the information, and that the transformation to the knowledge base of the brain's body allows you, right, to begin to understand what's going on inside of you, right? Because all you want to do is clear the sensory receive path, right, so that you feel more informed. So I have a practice. Remember these two words: progressive investing. That's the motivation. From the time I went to the Marine Corps and left the Marine Corps and began doing this work, I started from the bottom. I was almost illiterate when I left the Marine Corps. I'm proud to serve because the Marine Corps activated my brain. And as I went into the junior college levels, I began to do this work. But I had to have something that allowed me to feel comfortable as I moved from F's to D's to C's to A's. And that was progressive investing. Living each day to become more informed. More informed about what? You fill in the blank. The cause and the effect is informed. And what did education do for me? It allowed me to inform my brain, right? One of the most critical problems that I may have faced when I was a young person was discipline. So then I looked at science. I'm being very literal with you. I actually spent hours and hours inside the library. They were all manual back then, you go to a real library. I'm talking about spending hours. My family may only saw me maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, you know. I get the kids out to school, and I was hard at it, with the white support. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is that I needed to develop a strategy that would allow me to move from whatever environment I was in and continuously be able to inform my brain, learning how to do so. That's what we're talking about today. It's a practice, right? So, progressive investing, living each day to become more informed about what? How to discipline my body. You can't get through school without it because for every hour you spend in that classroom, you got to spend at least 3 hours outside that classroom going to work, which requires discipline because you still got to do all the other things, right? So, I want to move from that to understanding that to inform the brain, discipline the body, and focus the senses, you have to be able to do three things, right? Well, actually, there's five. Observe, listen, learn, help, and then lead. First, you have to learn how to observe. Observe what? That's what we're talking about. Listen. Listen to what? That's what we're talking about. So let's look at contact. Contact is physics. You can see it, you can experience it. That's why you want to observe. The next step is listen. Listen is an inner cognitive event, right? So I just talked to you about the social cognitive of contact, and then the inner cognitive event of you listening, hearing noise, sounds, signs, and symbols. And as you begin to try to translate them to an interpretation, right? That's the brain experiencing your sense of feel for self, right? And then now you're learning. And as you begin to learn, right, what happens next? You have to help. That's how you learn to cooperate because you got to realize in order for you to inform your brain, you have to be cooperative because your brain is doing the work. The key is understanding that your sense of feel for self has to be linked to the brain through your awareness that you're in the body and you have a brain and you and the brain have to work together. See, because the emotional effect is on you. The brain is not emotional. You're emotional. You see, your sense of feel for self means that you feel things and you don't avoid feeling things because when you feel something, you're connecting to the brain. See, because that's that sense data being transferred. That's that inner data being transferred. Okay, so you have the sense and the receive path, and they're communicating back and forth throughout you the whole time you're alive, right? Test this stuff. Get used to it, right? Because you've been doing it all your life. But now I want you to take it to the next level so that we can begin to improve. Let's look at it this way. We can begin to reduce family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets, and poverty, because in the 21st century, the old homeschool neighborhood environments are obsolete. Today, we don't have to leave our homes to earn a living. That's the new frontier. That's why I'm talking to you about understanding how to empower yourself in a wireless community where you use technology to advance your agendas. And somewhat you don't have to go to events and activities anymore. You don't have to go to restaurants. They bring that to your home, right? So what are we talking about? Moving through information to understanding why you process, right? The level of cooperation required because you want the information to be transferred into a knowledge base. And the knowledge base is the experience that flows from your sense of feel for self in the brain being included in the transaction through your cooperation. When you cooperate, right, that opens and clears the sense and receive path to transfer that data, right? And as it's being transferred, right, the emotion is in everything you do. So when you cooperate, your brain is already sending forward feed. And forward feed means that it's sending the mental process variables that allow you to calm down and begin to realize that you are becoming more disciplined, more controlled, and understanding your feeling on the inside of you. And that's why you practice. That's why we're practicing. That's why you practice, is because you want to become better at learning how to live inside your own body. Think about that. How many classes have you gone to? And they've been about, how do I survive me? That's what I'm talking about. Because we can be our own worst enemies when we don't have structure. And so I'm talking to you, but I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you from structure. I'm giving you the words that you can ground and test. So there are verbs, actions, and so forth and so on. And then you have the learning continuum that I'm talking about, action, when you can measure everything that I'm saying. So let's get to the point. This is brain talk. That's the first thing. So when you leave me today, understand what we're doing. We're talking to the brain. We're not talking to the body. I'm talking to your brain. Test it. What does he mean? That's what I mean. I'm talking to you, your brain. And I'm saying to you that if you have issues, it's because your sense of feel for self and the brain may be at odds. And the first thing you got to understand to clear the sense and receive path is that you must cooperate. No, you must cooperate because the brain is a self-organizing system. See? And you have to trust. And that's why I said calm, collect, confidence in your brain. Calm down, collect yourself, and become more confident, because your brain is not going to let you down. And if it does, I always say this, you know you need help. But that's the purpose of the assessment. You want to know why, or you want to know what happened. Like I did in my deep reflections, I want to know what happened. What happened to me? I've always been a smart person, so what happened to me? Why did it take me so long to realize where I am now and how I got to this point? That's what we're talking about. When you are involved, the brain works 24 hours a day. See? Some people may say that's too much pressure. That's too much. No, no, no. It doesn't work like that. You have to learn that you have inputs, throughputs, and outputs. And you have to learn how to use your outputs, right? That's what we're talking about. How do you inform you? Your outputs inform you. Like the headphones I'm wearing right now. You may think that I'm wearing the headphones and I look funny, but listen to this. Every word I say is fed right back to me. So I have instant experience of the experience, instant reflection of the reflection of my noise and sounds, which allows me to go to a whole other level, like I just did as I corrected myself. Because that's human system science. You want to hear your brain because I'm talking through my brain. My brain is transferring the noise and sounds and translating them so I can talk to you. So as I'm listening, right, I'm observing. And I want you to be able to observe you, and understand that that's how you practice self-correction. You see, you use the technology the same as what I'm doing right now. And if you was in this room with me, I'd have you sit next to me. And so I'd have you in headphones. And we still be talking or talking to someone else. And I'd be interviewing you, but I want you to get the experience of hearing how your brain feels. And when it makes a mistake, when you make a mistake, are you courageous enough to stop, go back and correct it, or did you just walk straight through it? That's what we're talking about, the brain's body learning system, right? So I'm just trying to break it down to you so when you see me live, because I'm in headphones. But understand, that's because I'm trying to help myself, help you, help me, help you. I just said that, but those are realities because there's levels to everything we're talking about, right? And we're still working on level one of sense, feel, focus. And you can observe, listen, learn, and help me lead the discussion on the brain's body. I just threw 7, 8 words at you, all related to talking to the brain, all grounded in the brain's body learning system. You see? That's how simple it can be. So what are we talking about in the structure of our conversation? leave here today understanding I'm talking about emotion, I'm talking about thought, I'm talking about reflection. And I'm talking about each of those in the sense of knowing how to inform your sense of feel for self in relation to the brain. And I'm saying that those are all natural events. We have emotion that's forward and backward and forward, meaning it's in the social cognitive path and it's in the inner sense of feel for self in the brain. That's why you can be very emotional because that's emotion inside you. When you have contact as inner or external, you become emotional. All right? Because it's in you, just like thinking. You don't want to get caught up in your thinking. That's why we structure the way we're talking to you so you can begin to organize your practice around how you balance emotion, thought, and reflection. Because to me, reflection is the most important because reflection is a feedback loop. So when you, for example, you cuss out your wife, or you cuss out your children, you cuss somebody out, and then the brain says, well, then what do? That feedback loop, that remorse is your reflective capacity to send stuff forward to try to recover from what you felt was inappropriate or incorrect, or you need to recover through. That's reflection. And that's why reflection is very important because it's a feedback loop, right? And I talk about it a lot. And what needs to be understood is that inside emotion and thought is reflection. And that's why you have a difficult time staying calm when you're under attack or you're in confrontation with another person because reflection is like, wow, this happened to me before. What should I do? Oh, relax. Seriously, calm down, collect, right? And let the brain do the work because the brain's going to do the work. Right? That's what the brain does. Right? Because it's a level to the brain. The brain has a whole system to operate from. It sends chemicals and so forth. It manufactures all types of interventions. And I'm saying to you, it's healing time. When you begin to understand what I need to know how to do is calm myself down and collect the energy, action, and feelings required for my brain to catch up to me because I've already reacted. So I just said that. So reflection and reaction, right? But response is the brain's process cycle. Reaction is like a reflex, bam, and that's the mistake because you just no patience, no calm down, just boom, you just into it, right? And then the brain says, no, let's do it right. And so you cooperate with that forward feed. You cooperate by allowing it, right? So that you can observe your brain's response physically through the social cognitive path. You see, I just said that. So no matter when we're talking, where we're talking, the brain is an inner process cycle of the brain. So when you look at it externally, that's when you use the body or use someone else's body. So what I'm saying to you in my practice, let's look at these two words, three words, human systems research, the study of self, the study of other people, and the study of the environment. So I got the environment, home, school, neighbor, and workplace that I'm studying in relation to other people. This could be my brothers, sisters, mother, father, children, any other person can fit into that area that you're studying. And then self, because self discovery involves you being able to clear your personality free from whatever you're trying to do and then address the real issue. So human systems research is a study of you first. Because you got to get out your own way. That's what I'm talking about. You got to cooperate. You got to get out your own way. So if I'm a human learning consultant, what I teach my human learning consultants is you have to remove you from the equation. You cannot be a part of the study. You have to make sure that you're allowing your clients to unwind, right, their feelings their issues, their concerns without being judged by you. So you got to take you out of it. That's the purpose of starting with self. And then you move to the other person. Why? Because now you're studying their brain, body, and sense system. You see? In their home, school, neighborhood, workplace networks. Now you can improve upon the relationship between the brain and the labor issue. Because if a parent is talking to me, I'm talking about the parent's labor, and I understand the parent if she or he has a troubled kid that they're dealing with, because that's time consumption away from work. It's a real issue to the parent. We got to address that issue, but I got to teach the parent mentally how to do that in relation to participation with the child. See? And connect that too, because many of the issues that children and parents face is the parent knows this can affect my job. I will not be able to pay my bills. And you got to calm the parent down and let them know, well, your child is the investment and you are the business leader, and that's what you present to your job. No, because that's where the labor movement has created this space, family time, that the government has sanctioned by law, because it comes with the understanding the family and the labor, and then the development of the child and the other members of the family. When you have an issue, it must be addressed. Why? Because it can prevent you from giving your labor without problems that cost even more. So what I'm saying to you is the brain, remember, and we got to talk about it more and more every day because we don't do it. When you talk about the mind. The mind is your memory. It's a memory state. It's a mood state. It's not the brain. No, it was created in the context of your labor, right? Because all those scientists, they wanted to develop tools that allowed the royal elements of society to benefit from labor. So they disassociated any type of science that talked about the brain, right? So when I go back to behaviorism, you just look at here's your response. Your response is driven by what? The environment. So if I put something in front of you, that's what you're going to respond to. There's nothing inside you except what I put to you. And so you have the stimulus response, no process. That's what I'm talking about. Recover. Come back home and be human. Because human beings think, but they don't just think, they feel things first. So this is the organization of our conversation. So today, all I wanted to do was lay down why you're tuning into my show, right? Because I am sitting here in front of you, preparing you for when we open up and begin to really do some entertaining stuff, right? Like the Brains Body Showcase and so forth, things like that. But first, I want you to know what it is that you're practicing. You're practicing healing and recovery. Why? Because it doesn't matter where you are, where you come from, black, brown, white, or whatever, you've been impacted by the behavior system. Okay? And so when you talk about trying to move a kid through the public school system in the 21st century, those are generational gaps in intellect. Because the technology today is not the technology that was developed for you. It's technology that you got to become more aware of, but it's made for the children. Why the children are able to just adapt and adjust to it so easily and move on it. And you got to play catch up because you got to understand how to study the brain, because the brain is what allows you to create the space to calm down and interface with that technology more effectively, but in relation to your real concerns. Again, here we go. Backward feed, forward feed. We're going to continue to talk about that because that is critical to the brain body learning system so that you begin to learn how to catch up when you make a mistake. Lastly, if you don't believe me now, think about human learning and go look it up in a dictionary, and you'll see that it's tied to behaviorism. You can test what I'm saying to you. That's why when I use the word human learning, I'm talking about what I'm telling you to do. Test yourself with other human beings, right? And begin to see their interpretation of their own labor. And is their brain attached to that concept? Or are they separate? You know? Because when you go to school, when you go to university, right? You think you're ready, but you're not. You know why? Because they prepared your labor. At the university, now they want your brain. See? Because they're trying to say, now you got to become an officer rather than an Indian. Okay? Because we want you to graduate and be in command of leadership functions at the level, right, of your choice, the field of your choice, but not as a foot soldier, but as an officer. They want your brain, right? So many kids go to college, they end up back home because they were prepared to give their labor, but not their brain. See? So recover, heal time, heal time. Come with me now. Dr. Christopher Kevin Slaton, human learning consultant. Now you get a sense of why, so don't laugh. Human learning consultant, because what am I talking about? Helping you learn how your brain senses and receives information, knowledge, experience, and self-analysis, right? For synthesis. Get this right, the reflection path is a synthesis path, meaning it synthesizes all these experiences from the sense path to the inner experience of the unknown, sending it forward where it becomes more known, recognizable. That's why you can say, aha, I've been there, I got it. That was pretty easy because your sense receive path, you were patient enough and cooperative enough to allow the brain to bring all that information together from the social to the inner to the balance of emotion, thought, and reflection, because that's how you got to do it. So even if you're too emotional, you still create the knowledge base through which the brain can now begin to build confidence. Your sense of feel for self and the brain have to come together and feel confident that you can do this work. See? Again, Dr. Christopher Slaton, test this, test this, test this, please. And remember, I'm here. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Dr. Christopher K. Slaton, host of the Brains Body podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for the next step. Author of Education and Science, The Brain's Body, help to improve brain, body, and sense events. Go to Christopher K. Slaton's Amazon page and review his literature and to purchase your copy today.